Today I'm joined by three powerhouses in the wholesaling and flipping industry. We've got Ty the Flip Man himself, and if you don't know Ty, you've been living under a rock. We've also got Pace Morby. He's making a huge entrance into the real estate education space, especially with the creative financing. And we've got Jamil, and Jamil is one of the largest wholesalers in the country. So it's gonna be really exciting. These are some juggernauts that we're gonna share on this video. Their all-time best and worst deals. All of that and more coming up.
This video is brought to you by Free Comps, a free software that gives you the value of any house in seconds. Get your free copy now at compmydeal.com.
Hey, if you're new here to the channel, I'm Jerry Norton with FlippingMastery.com, and this channel is all about ways to make money wholesaling and flipping real estate so you can live your dream life. Be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications so you don't miss new videos. So first of all, thanks guys for being on the channel with me. This is really exciting. Pace and Jamil, they've been on the channel before, so never a dull moment with you guys. We're gonna have some fun. And this is my first time with Ty, so it's an honor, Ty, to finally meet you. And Ty, you're kind of like me, you're a content machine. I think you told me like almost 500 videos on your channel. And so that's really exciting. And if you want to check that channel out, it's Ask Flip Man, right? Ask Flip Man. Correct. So check out Ty's channel. And Jamil and Pace also, they're doing quite a bit as well now in YouTube and on Facebook. So we're going to talk about that. So here's what we're going to do on this video. So Pace, Jamil, Ty, and myself, we're going to share our all-time best and worst deals. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a profit-loss situation. It could be. And to keep it interesting, the rest of us are going to comment on the other's experience and why we thought that was either brilliant or why that was a bad move. And we'll just kind of banter a little bit and we'll talk about that. So for those of you watching, also leave a comment and share who you thought had the best winner deal and the worst loser deal. So fair enough? Sound good, guys?
Love it. Yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, so let's start with you, Ty. How about you share with us first? Right. What was your worst deal? Let's start with your worst deal first.
All right. Wow. In reality, probably my worst deal was my first deal.
Oh.
And
don't say.
Introduced to real estate through Ron LeGrand's information. Bought a bootleg copy of his course.
Yes.
If I ever meet you, Ron,
yes.
if I ever meet you, Ron, I'll give you the I'll give you the $1,500.
Yeah.
If I ever meet you. All right, but because it changed my life, I spent $400 for it off of eBay, and it wasn't actually off eBay. The guy contacted me afterwards.
No one's coming to arrest
Which if you buy, guys, if you buy our training, don't do it that way. Go to the right site.
Especially mine, but anyway, so I learned about wholesaling, lease options, W2, all that stuff. I went from zero to just learning not everything, but a lot about real estate, invested in creative ways of investing in real estate with no cash or credit. So the three things that stuck to me was the lease option, wholesaling, and bandit signs, right? As far as my personality, somewhat of an introvert or whatever, but if people call me and I know what I'm talking about, I can handle that, and I can turn that into a payday. So anyway, I bought some bandit signs, put them out I picked them up on a Friday, put them out on a Sunday. The first two calls were deals. One of them was a lease option opportunity, and the other was a wholesale opportunity. The lease option opportunity blew up in my face, all right? And the reason that it blew up in my face, the guy called me, it was he had inherited a property, but he still had a mortgage on it, and he didn't live in it, and the property that he was living in had a mortgage also. He couldn't afford both. So he called me, I went and met him at the house. It was in livable condition, needs some repairs, but it definitely was livable. I explained to him from A to Z how that worked. What was in it for him, what was in it for me, and my intentions or whatever, and how I would actually make money on it, which is on the down payment, the monthly cash flow, and then the back end if the lady whoever the tenant buyer ever got financed. So advertised it in the newspaper. That's how long it's been ago. An actual newspaper existed. It was back in 2003. And lady called me. She was a nurse. She had money but didn't have credit at the time. So I advertised it with $5,000 down. She met me in a restaurant in Old Charlie's on Roebuck Parkway in Birmingham. You all
Wow,
know
this
what
left
that
an
is.
impression. Because how long ago was this?
This is back in 2003.
Wow.
Okay, so
So anyway,
he remembers where he met him.
yeah, she put 50 $100 bills in my hand. That was the most money I had ever seen at that point outside of a tax return. I don't think I ever got that much. So it was the most money I had seen cash in my hand. All right, so I was like, I could have stopped then because I had tried so many things before then because I'm an entrepreneur first, and real estate was just the first way I ever made any real money. And but I could have stopped then just because, man, it works or whatever. So
thank you, Ron.
I know this is a long story, but this is one worse deal. So I still had a job at the time, and so one of the guys I worked with, he did mortgages, and the guy that owned that property mentioned that he would like to refinance his house. So I put them together to try to create a win-win. The lady saw the house, she wanted to do some repairs, and the guy that owned the house said he was a handyman. He could do some repairs on the house. I was creating that win-win. So my friend mentioned to him that Ty has already found someone and the lady's already given him $5,000, right? So when he heard that, he felt that at least half, if not all of that money should go to him. Because, he was in financial straits or whatever. So, so when he was supposed to meet the lady at the house to talk about the repairs, he came over in a windstorm, told her to get off his effing property. Tyrone does not own this property, and he was going to call the police. So she called me just crying, just crying.
But you had your paperwork all together, right?
Yeah, I did.
It didn't matter.
It didn't matter. So I told her, where are you right now? I said, I'll bring you your money, because I didn't want to go through that. So I was on Green Springs Highway in Birmingham, and I went to the bank. It was AmSouth now Regions, and got the money. I had already spent $700 of it. I don't know why I got it. You know what I'm saying? So
I was wondering if you spent any of it.
I had already spent $700. I had to make that up some kind of way.
Oh, so did you give her $4,300? Did you
No,
bring her back
I gave her up to $5,000 back. So I met her
5,100.
and gave her the money, and I called him, and he and I got into it. In the time frame that he and my friend were dealing about his mortgage, I found out he was a minister. And I said, I don't know what group of people are following you, but they're headed down a disastrous road.
Because he's reneging on his deal.
Yeah, and so he said he started cutting. I was cutting too, but and he said, his last words to me, if I ever see you again, it won't be nice. And I just hung up. So I could have quit then, you know what I'm saying, because all that stuff that I learned and the money, I ended up having to give him the money back. But luckily I had the second deal right behind it. So
the cool thing is you walk through the process, right? So I tell people all the time, even if a deal falls apart, you learn probably 25 things in that thing. I mean, number one, don't tell anybody you got $5,100, because then the seller's going to figure all that stuff out.
Exactly.
So Pace, I was going to ask you, because this is your world, creative financing, and is that your advice? Maybe is don't tell the guy you got the deal from that you just collected a $5,100 deposit from a new tenant.
Well, I told my friend, and he told him that was happening with the mortgage. I was excited.
Don't tell your friend.
Loose lips sink
I know
ships.
that now. I
Hey,
know
where's that friend now? Where's he? What's he doing?
I don't even know how to
It's
get
his
in
fault.
contact with him.
He's the one that sold you the Ron LeGrand course, isn't he?
No, I wish.
Worst
That's
deal.
awesome.
Okay.
That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I mean, honestly, I love the fact that you continued on after it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not super, I think what happened there was absolutely just like your beginner,
Normal.
right? It's a normal thing for you to want to talk about your win and share that with a friend. I think that's okay.
I was excited.
Yeah, you should, as you should have been.
Yeah.
However, getting into that situation, feeling that elation, and then feeling that kick in the stomach after that, that's hard.
Yeah.
And most people, 99% of people would have quit. And the fact that you didn't is the reason why you've changed so many hundreds and thousands of lives, I'm sure, from your channel and the knowledge that you've been sharing with people. So, thank you for not giving up.
I don't know if I would have. I had the next deal, right? It's just they were like together, basically. I was working on both of them. I question sometimes would I have given up if I didn't have that deal where I did make $2,500 on a wholesale deal, and it happened quickly.
From the same bandit signs.
Yeah, from the same bandit sign. My first 2 cars, and I hate telling that story because I don't want to get people that impression that is that I just put out bandit signs and
made all this money.
And the deals just started falling. Nah, I was fortunate. Very
I
fortunate.
honestly think the worst thing that could happen to somebody brand new is their first deal or two, they make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Because then in their mindset, they think now everything they touch turns to gold. They start making bad decisions. What I've seen is people who really hit it out of the park right out of the get-go end up doing like 3 or 4 really bad deals after that, right? Because 100%. They didn't go through some of that learning.
100%.
Yeah.
So that's normal, right? It's normal to go through that kind of experience. All right, so best deal, Ty. What's your best deal all time?
I've done more in money-wise, but to me it's the best deal because of the relationship I built with a cash buyer that's probably, I would probably say, that I know of the main cash buyer in Birmingham or whatever. But I was sitting in a barbershop, you know, believe it, I go to a barbershop. Now I just only get this done. I figured out doing Corona, I could
on your own, right?
I could manage this myself, even though I used to let him do it all. But I can never get my beard and mustache right. But anyway, so I was sitting in the barbershop and I got a call from one of my bandit signs, and a guy called me, and when he gave me the address, I knew it was in one of our B plus approaching A areas. And he gave me a price of $100,000 over the phone, right? Nothing is over there for $100,000.
Yeah, you knew instantly that was a deal.
What I'm saying? So when I went to the house, I went to the house, and the house was shabby. You could tell it was hadn't been taken care of compared to the rest of the neighborhood or whatever. But when I went in the house, it was a hoarder. Mm-hmm. He lived in the house. He wasn't the hoarder. His uncle was. His uncle died and left him the house. This the type of hoarder he was. He had created a bird cage in one of the rooms, and birds are filthy.
Wow.
Ty, you know this is your best deal story, right?
Yeah, I know. I know.
Okay, just making sure.
And so I looked through the house or whatever, and he said, "Yeah, my wife's in the bathroom, blah blah blah." And I was just surprised on a couple of fronts. Okay, it was a younger white guy, and he said, "My wife's in the bathroom, blah blah blah. She's gonna come out in a moment." And when she came out, it was a younger black lady or whatever. So I was like, I said, "Man, I'm not gonna get this deal." When I saw her, I got more comfortable or whatever. And so anyway,
you stopped talking to him, start talking to her.
Hey, Ty, can I just ask? Because like when I walk down the street and a brother walks down the street, we do this. was it one of those moments when she walked out the bathroom where you like?
I was totally like, "Hey, okay,
I got this deal."
Not that I don't do deals like that. I was just saying. But anyway, that just stood out to me in my memory that I was surprised when she came out of the bathroom. I wasn't expecting that or whatever. So anyway, we looked at the house, and so I offered him 90 for the house. 100 would have worked. I was just I was great. And so he said, "Well, someone's already offered me that. I really wanted 100, like that." Okay, it called someone else. Mm-hmm. I said, "If you sign the contract today, we can do the 100 or whatever." I was just throwing it out there, see, whatever, I can get another 10 grand or whatever. And so we signed the contract. That was on the Sunday. So he called me on Saturday. I saw it on the Sunday. I reached out to this bird dog lady. She always just always is sending me stuff. I said, "Hey," her name is Dorothy. I said, "Dorothy, I said, you got anybody for Homewood?" Or what? "I got people, but I'm just throwing you a bone because we never really actually did a deal." She said, "Yeah, I got somebody like that." So she sent the guy there, so he reached out to me. He said, "Yeah, man." So
she had the cash buyer?
Yeah, she had the cash buyer. So
you're JV with her?
Sort of, yeah. Okay. So she sent his contact information to me. He called me immediately. He said, "Yeah, man," because I told her, okay, I had on the contract for 100. I told her 145, right? Ooh, okay. And
nice.
So
you got Jamil excited with those numbers.
So he called me back. So he reached out to me after she passed his information on, passed my information on to him. And so he hit me up. He said, "Man, I do 140. Don't even short anybody else like that. I know exactly what I've done. Several houses over there I said, okay. He said, how much earnest money you want? I said, $2,500. He said, I'll meet you tomorrow. We're going to meet. So we met in this Walmart parking lot, and he gave me a check. He didn't worry about sending it to an attorney or anything. He gave me the check.
$2,500.
25 big ones. And so I was like, wow. I said, man, how long you been there? He said, man, I've been doing this since longer than I have been. I was like, wow, we never met each other. He said, nah.
How long had you been wholesaling at that time?
What year was this? Probably, let me see, probably about 12 years.
Okay, so you've been in your career a while.
Yeah,
okay.
and I had never met him before.
I think we met him when we were in Birmingham. He's still the biggest cash buyer.
Matthew Gregory.
Yeah.
And so
he fixes and flips more than anybody else.
Yeah, he's a real deal. And so anyway, that was on so the call happened on a Saturday. Put it on the contract that Sunday. We closed it that next Monday. Right.
Did he do title work?
Yeah, he did all that.
Oh,
We
okay.
did have a little issue with the title because it was an inherited property. We it was a registered, will, a recorded will or whatever, and so we got
all that sorted out.
I got it all sorted out.
How much did you have to pay the bird dog?
$1,000.
That's it.
$1,000, yeah.
And she gave you one of the best relationships
Yeah,
you've ever had.
yeah. That's why it's the best.
And here's the
deal
real
because
question:
of the money he
how
and I
many
made.
how many deals would you guess you've done with him after that one? Like, did it return into repeat?
Yeah. That's what I'm about to say. Probably another, maybe 6 or 7.
Okay.
So 6.
Bigger deals or smaller deals?
Nothing was never that big. That's out of the norm for my
That's a home run.
Would you say you
that's
made
out of the norm for my
upwards of $200,000 in totality with this relationship?
Probably closer to 100.
100 grand?
Probably about 100. Yeah.
Wow.
Probably.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
What I like about that story more than anything else is that people think that this market and it's a kind of a niche.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Even in Birmingham, you could operate for 12 years and not run into anybody else that's doing wholesale. Like, there's so many people to work with. There's so many people to network with. There's so many opportunities out there.
And new people all the time.
All the time.
You want to know what I found super interesting is that Ty could have very easily sold that deal. He knew that he stumbled into the great deal, right?
Right.
But what did he do? He called the bird dog because he wanted to give her something.
Right.
Right? He felt he wanted to throw her a bone because she'd been, contacting him a lot. And so what I gravitate to in that story is that the heart was to give, to share, to be able to help this person, do a deal or be involved in a deal that you knew was a slam dunk, that you knew was easy pickings. You could have sold it anyways. But through that intention of wanting to help somebody, you make it a relationship with one of the best buyers in Birmingham. And so I see how that's just an amazing thing, coming back and giving back to you for you having the right heart.
On top of that, a day later, a guy begged me to get out of that contract, and he would do it for $160. I was like, nah, man, I don't do business like that, man. I said,
you said it, you do it, because it's a small world.
I don't do business like that, man. I said, that's not even.
So then you got the test. You got the test the next day.
Yeah.
That's
the universe was testing.
Yeah, 100%.
But I had put it out to a couple of people, while I put it out to her or whatever. So I was like, no, that's not even an option, man.
The amazing thing is, call Saturday, contract Sunday, close Monday.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a 3-day
40 grand.
40 grand.
What 39?
39. Yeah. Because Dorothy got her grand.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Did she ever go? Did she ever find Kansas, or is she still hanging out with you?
I hear from her now again.
You didn't tell her how much you made, did you?
She's probably. I've told this before. If she watches any of my stuff,
She found out afterwards on a YouTube video one day.
Yeah, but she was cool with it.
I was just wondering if you learned from your worst mistake not to tell anybody.
Hey, that was some years ago, man.
Awesome.
So whatever.
Love it. Very good.
Yeah.
So leave a comment, share your thoughts, maybe opinions about Ty's best and worst example. So thank you, Ty. Let's go to Jamil.
Awesome.
Let's start with your worst.
All right. So my worst deal is an interesting one because I'm coming off the tailwind of some big wins in land. Right?
Land.
Yes.
Okay.
So now you had just talked about, when you hit it out of the park a couple of times, you start to feel invincible. You start to think that you can do it all, and that's exactly the story that we're gonna embark on right now. So what happens is, I have a couple of big wins in land. One of them will be my best story. So you guys will circle back. And
not houses.
This is just land. Right? Now there's structures on there, but I'm looking at the highest and best use as the land. Right? Not the structures, but the land. Dirt. is in the dirt. So there's a realtor who I work with in town, Stacy Granger. She's an amazing lady. She was knocking on doors, and she stumbled into a situation where she could put multiple properties under contract. She knows me. She trusts me with addresses. You know,
seller, one seller, or no?
No, multiple sellers. So she starts by contracting 2. They lead her to the neighbor. She contracts the next, which leads her to a neighbor who's living in, I think, Germany or South Africa, which contracts the next 2. Right?
So just snowballing.
Right. Okay. And so what she's saying to me is, and I'm staying with her through the whole thing, right? So she gets the first 2, and I'm like, great, let's knock down the next. Great, now let's knock down the next. And so together, we end up with a 4-acre parcel in Arcadia.
Okay.
Right? So amazing
Which
deal.
You listening, that's like
the Beverly Hills
area.
of Phoenix, right? Essentially, it's like a really good spot. And so we got this 4 acres of land under contract, and the partner I'm working with is Chris Hyman on the deal, because I'm looking at it and I think, hey, Chris is a hard money lender, and he would have the wherewithal to be able to, get the funds to take us down, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. I know that he'd be a great money partner, a great partner to be in. So Chris and I are talking. We're in escrow, and right before we have to remove conditions for the inspection period, we get an offer from a builder. And the builder says, guys, I'll take over the contract. I'll give you $100,000. Walk away, right? So Chris and I have this moment, right, where we're in his office talking with his brother, who's also his partner, sister, my sister, him, and we're all, it's like a family thing, right?
And the question is, take the 100 and leave?
Take the 100 and leave,
or maybe more.
Or maybe more. And we start doing projections, and the projections are wrong because we're not builders, right? But our projections are we're going to become gajillionaires through this, right? Jeff Bezos, watch out. It's a legitimate opportunity to have that Aladdin moment, right?
Subdivide it out.
Yeah,
and do all these
subdivide it
things,
out, and now I'm on a magic carpet. Life is great, right? So we say no to the $100,000, and that's the time when, right? It's like that. You hear the doink, doink, the lock turn. The universe is like, you're screwed. And now, so it's like we chose the adventure, and so the $100,000 walks away, and we end up taking the property down. I'm getting married now. I'm getting married this week, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like a little bit of nerves because, we could have had $100,000. I'm still not super wealthy by any means. I've got a little bit. Things are going. But
your honeymoon could have been amazing.
But all of a sudden I'm taking on a hard money payment, which looks to be around $20,000 a month, and I'm just getting married, and it's like, this is stress, right? Yeah. This is real stress. And so our thing was, okay, well, here's what we should do. Let's just go to the city. Let's get our entitlements done. And then let's flip this with entitlements to a builder. Come to find out, that's not how builders buy land. Builders want to put their product on land. So rookie mistake, don't ever think that a builder wants to buy your project. A builder wants to buy your dirt to do their project. That's raw dirt 101, guys. So we made the mistake of spending all that time and money in development and then not coming to fruit. And so we do that. We spend about 6 months in this period now at $20,000 a month in hard money. And no builder wants to buy it. All of a sudden, we end up having to list with a big shot agent who deals with other, with public company buyers, right? Mm-hmm. And he has relationships with all of the national home builders. And he brings D.R. Horton to the table, right? Now, for those of you who don't know, you think, wow, you sold to D.R. Horton. When you sell to a public company, things change, right? If you've ever heard the horror stories of people who did business with Walmart or people who did business with Costco, nobody walks out of those relationships rich, right? Except for Costco and Walmart. And so
did they do options with you?
Oh yeah. It was
so they're not committed
ever. Never committed. It's 2 toes in the whole way, right? Until close.
Yeah.
And so they tie us up into what turns into a 2-year escrow.
Oh my gosh.
At $20,000 a month.
In carry
for me, right? Newlywed.
How many years ago was this?
It's few now. It's probably
Okay.
like 5 years ago,
Okay.
I think. It's probably maybe 6. It's been a while. It's been a while. My wife and I are fine now. But but we're in this.
Guys, with a few years of therapy, you can get through anything.
Totally. Also, you know, she got a new car. It shook out in her interest, so it's all great. But the stress was nevertheless hard. So we're in that. Ultimately, D.R. Horton closes, right? And when you look at the transaction on paper, right, for what we bought to what they closed at, you would think, oh my God, you guys made so much money. At the end of the day, right, it was the great forced savings, because once I factored in the 20 grand a month that I was shelling out for hard money expenses, I believe I made $9. Right? It was a ridiculous profit. But I got out of that without having lost that money. It was a forced savings plan. So I did get a massive check when the closing happened. But for all the time, stress, energy, effort, wasn't worth it. The worst deal I ever did, the biggest deal I ever did, and also the worst deal I ever did.
This is the lot that's across the street from Jesse Burrell's house, right?
Correct.
So when I go over there, he points out, he goes, that's Jamil's worst deal right there.
Yep.
Literally across the street.
Yeah.
What's there now? Nothing still?
No, D.R. Horton built townhomes.
They're almost done.
D.R. Horton built townhomes.
What are they selling for?
All the money. All the money. Yeah. D.R.
Yeah, this is
I'm saying, what is the
price point?
Yeah, the price.
$700.
Yeah, I'm in there.
For 55. Yeah. So the gajillion dollars we were supposed to make, they made.
Yeah.
Right. But we weren't builders. It's that thing, right? I'm not a builder. I have developed land, but I'm not a builder. And so when you take your attention off of your core competency, which for me is wholesaling, which is what I should have done in the first place. I should have taken the $100,000 off the hop, made that money, happy wife, happy life, 50 grand, 50 to Chris, 50 to me, everything's cool. None of that happened, right? Yeah. So
this actually makes a lot of sense to me, because advice that you give people when you and I travel around the country is always take the money now. Don't count the possible money, right? Like people say, oh, I could have sold it for an extra 10 grand. You go, no,
that wasn't your money to have.
That wasn't your money to have.
Yeah.
Take the money right there.
Yeah.
It's great advice.
So I've got a really big comment to say on this, because I deal in those type of deals. We're doing multi-million-dollar projects, and how you structure those big deals is everything on your financing. Because had you structured that differently, your outcome could have been way different.
100%.
So, hard money on a multi-million-dollar loan is tens of thousands of dollars. That carry can create so much stress that when you get to the end of a project, you're just ready to fire sale that thing. You're not patient. That carry's just eaten into it every single day.
Right.
And so that type of situation, those work out better. What I try to do is more of an equity type thing. I'm not making a payment every month. On paper, it's like, well, maybe you're giving up 50% of your net. But dude, just not having a $10,000 a month payment and the patience now to see it through, if it takes longer, is a whole lot, worth it.
The other thing is, of those lots that we structured, when we put them together, I learned on the last contract, because I'd spoken to a land developer, somebody whose core business was that, he explained to me, no, you can have inspection periods that are open-ended, where you can have it be that my inspection period doesn't end until entitlements have been issued, right? And had that been the case, D.R. Horton, which was holding us until their entitlements were complete, would have had the pass-through.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have ever had to have closed on that piece until D.R. Horton got their final entitlement, and then we would have made $1 million or whatever that was, right? And so the structuring of the contract was where the mistake happened.
So an open-ended
inspection period on a land deal is 100% acceptable.
Yeah.
Because look at this. Land is highest and best use, and you don't know what the highest and best use is until you've got your final approval, right? And so your seller can't have you give them a price on a property that's not taking into consideration. If they want X number of millions of dollars for what you could benefit from it, they better wait for you to be able to receive that benefit.
Well, think about it. So if D.R. Horton goes out and buys 100 acres from a farmer, they are always going to structure that on an option. And it might be a 5 or 10-year option. They might put $200,000 down. Then they do all of their feasibility and everything. They get through all of their zoning and all of that. And then if the deal makes sense, economy at that point, then they'll close on that deal. If it doesn't, they'll walk from their $200,000 option, and they didn't have the $10 million out for 2 years of development.
They saved money. So
yeah.
So what did it cost you all as far as you all were trying to become developers? What did it cost you in the due diligence period of getting the architect and all that stuff?
So my total return to me was around $400,000 in carrying and also expenses. So I think the process in that first 6 months when we were trying to get entitlements, we might have been into about $50,000.
Okay.
In like site plan and whatever, all
Red
the
tape.
engineering and all that. And we weren't using the best guys by any means, but there's a cost there, right?
Yeah.
And none of it really found its way back to us until a few years later.
Awesome. Great lesson.
Okay. So my
best.
My
Let's
best.
hear the best.
Now, guys, I wholesale, right? And so I'm going to talk about another land deal here. And it's but here's where I want everybody to take note because this is interesting. This is a house that's sat in the same area, Arcadia. It was a mansion. This mansion was sitting on a 1 acre piece of land, and it had been listed for about 8.5 months. And the realtor, Monique Walker, who's a friend of mine, reached out to me and said, "Jamil, I'm having the hardest time with this house. There's a really sad story attached to it, and I would need your help." I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Well, this man built this house for his wife, who in the process of building the house dies of cancer. And he built the house so custom to her needs and her wants and her desires
No one wants
that
it
no
now.
one wants the house now, right? And so there's this beautiful mansion which is very custom, and everyone's looking at it, but nobody wants to buy the house, so it sits on the MLS forever. And she's now got it listed at $925,000 from like $1,050,000 of 9 months previous, right?
Okay.
And so she said, what can you do with this? Like, could this be a deal that you as a wholesaler could turn into something? And so when I first looked at it, I looked at it as the house. And I'm like, this house is not for me, right? It's not going to be, maybe a Jerry Norton who does luxury remodels would buy it, but he's not giving you $900,000 for this house. Jerry's giving you $500,000 for this house.
Because he's got to spend $500.
Because you got to spend $500 to get there, and you might get 1.3 out of it in the end, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that math, and I know that that's not going to work for you or anybody else in that. But what I do is I deconstruct, and I think the highest and best use. What's the highest and best use for this acre? Sad thing is we bulldozed the mansion, right? Because it had R6 zoning. Yeah. And no one would ever think to bulldoze a mansion. When do you ever say, let's take this 8,500 square foot gorgeous house and level it, right?
Right.
And so ultimately what we do is I look at it that way. I see it's R16 zoning. We have a little over an acre. That's 6 lots. Houses in Arcadia, once built, sell for around $1 million a piece, which give me a pretty valuable piece of land here, right? This is at least $1 million to a developer. So I contracted at $900,000. I bring in a land planner to do a quick site map, a quick draw for us, a sketch to see what does this look like with 6 lots. Can fire, can all the things that are required be handled? He, back of the napkin, sketches it. It's Mike Hare. He's like, yeah, this works. And so he said, and I actually might have somebody for it. So Mike Hare reaches out to Mike Zerbib, who is a developer in Arcadia, and calls him up, and he says, hey, would you buy this for $1 million? And that day he said, I'll take it. And he put a $100,000 non-refundable earnest deposit. Our assignment fee was $100,000 on that deal. And this is a deal that no one wanted to touch. This is a deal that sat on the MLS forever.
In plain sight.
In plain sight.
Hidden in plain sight.
Hidden in plain sight. And ultimately what it had to do was, you had to bulldoze the house to get to the value. So an interesting play. As wholesalers, guys, I think that it's important to understand that there are multiple ways to skin a cat, right? There are multiple ways to solve the problem. This seller ultimately needed to solve the problem, right? The problem was the sale of the house. $900,000 was a great number for him. Had a luxury rehabber bought it, as you heard, Jerry would have only paid $500,000 for that house, right?
Yeah.
And so how can you look at a property and find the highest and best use so that you can maximize the amount of money that you can give to the seller and maximize your profit? So my best deal ever, really interesting lesson that I learned. And that's what I got to say about that.
Awesome. Love it. What I love about it is it's, I mean, the 100 grand's amazing, like, right? A wholesale fee for 100 grand. That's really awesome. But it's more of the creativity that went into it. For me, it's more of, this deal was sitting there. Anybody could have done that.
Right.
Anybody could have done that, but no one had the foresight to think about how to structure a deal and think about how many deals are out there right now like that.
Right.
Where if you just had the right creativity, connect the pieces, there's money sitting right there.
100%.
Have you driven by the property to see what they
Oh
do?
yeah. He bulldozed the mansion. It was a kind of a terrible thing. On the day of close, the guy was supposed to have left and he didn't leave. We showed up to the house and he actually only stuck around to see if we could make sure that the fish weren't destroyed, right? Because his wife had a saltwater tank and he hadn't rehomed the fish, and so that turned into a thing. The lender, anyways, it wasn't pretty. However, I did drive by. They did rebuild. They did build 6 beautiful houses over there.
Because what are they doing, like 50-foot lots or something?
Yeah,
in there?
2 stories. It was.
Price points like $750 to $1 million.
I saw the last one traded at $975.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love too how you own your place in the world, right? Because the cool thing about wholesaling is you carve out a little sliver of profit and then you leave the lion's share to the next guy, and that's why wholesaling works,
Yes.
right?
Right.
I'll source a good deal. I'll take a little bit, leave this spread for someone that wants to go in, and that's their thing to develop out something like that.
Right. So that was the win that
Opposite.
took me to my loss.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm coming off of that real win. Right.
Now I get
Circle back to
Makes total sense
yeah,
now.
So that's
I'm a
why.
master of land. I
Yeah,
know what I'm
I
doing.
know what I'm doing.
You went from a flipping genius to a moron.
100%.
From one deal to the next.
In the same week.
It's so good.
$9.
Love it.
So
$100.
Yeah.
How long it took to close it?
Oh, he closed that in like 7 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was fast.
No messing around.
Fast. He wasn't messing around. He
The
wanted
right
to get
buyers
that.
don't mess around.
No,
right?
in fact, he let the way that they structured, like there were good pieces and bad pieces to it. They let the guy stay there for some time while they were still doing some work at the city, but when they were actually taking possession, that's when the whole standoff happened with the fish.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, Pace, you're up. Let's start with your worst.
Love it. So my worst actually just happened, and it happened just during the slowdown, right? So we actually had a couple things that we learned in our wholesale business. We learned that working from home and remotely can be challenging if you don't train your people properly, right? So we didn't really think about that. We just said, all right, guys, go work from home. This is what's going on in the economy. You guys are going to work from home. KPIs dipped, everything dipped because productivity dipped because people weren't being managed the way that we were in the office. So April was a tough month for us just because of that alone. Our guys weren't making the calls, we weren't putting the work in, people were kind of having social time at home. Anyway, we contract this deal, and we really didn't realize that the world was going to shut off for about 45 days. And it was an older lady in Mesa. She was basically selling her property just to go out and do RV. Like, I'm going to go RV for the rest of my life. That's what I'm doing. I'm selling the house. I've already put the deposit down on the RV. I need the sale of the house to finish paying off the RV, right? So she had this stuff, and we were the solution to that. It came from text messaging, for anybody who wants to know. It came from high equity list in Mesa. We love East Valley. Very, very simple, easy deal. We just said, yeah, no problem. We'll close really quick.
Sight unseen. Or did you go see it?
Sight unseen.
Okay.
Sight unseen. We just knew it. We knew it was a good deal. Week later, COVID hits.
Week later after closing or contracting?
Contracting.
Okay.
Close of escrow is like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we're a week or 2 weeks after the national emergencies announced, all that kind of stuff.
And at that point, you can't do anything, right? Like
No, it was the craziest thing. It was like I just said, look, I think this is a great deal. I'm not gonna renegotiate with this lady. I know we'll find a buyer. We couldn't find a buyer, so we ended up closing on the deal.
You were doing a lease option, or did you do subject to?
This was all wholesale. This was
just a wholesale.
This was
Okay,
just straight wholesale. So we ended up closing on the deal, and I ended up writing a $20,000 check to get rid of
it.
the deal.
Oh.
And part of it was, when we were going through, we had about 15 houses in contract in the pipeline during the COVID situation. We went back through, and I'm not a big renegotiator.
Yeah.
I just don't feel right. I wouldn't want to be treated that way, so I don't really renegotiate with sellers.
Okay.
And so my team comes back to me.
Because that was going to be my question. Why not? Why didn't you renegotiate or terminate?
We tried, but then basically she's like, I had my heart set on this RV.
Okay.
I had this situation. She's like, you guys don't know what you're doing to me. I've planned this whole thing out. And I go, guys, let's close on it. And basically because COVID was going on and it was kind of ramping up at the time, now it's settled down.
So if you would have held,
if I would have held, I wouldn't have written a check.
But no one knew it. That everything was like, holy crap, what's going to happen today? It's glued to the news.
Right, and for me, it was more the emotional situation of like, just write the check.
Get it out of here.
Get her taken care of. We never want a bad story. We never want to feel bad about what we do. You know, when Anna, who was running my construction company for 6 years, came on board with my wholesale operation, she's like, I just don't feel right about what we're doing. We're offering people 50 cents on the dollar for their houses, and I just don't feel right about this. Then I went through and I showed her, here's the last 100 deals I did and every solution I provided to those 100 people. And by the time I got to the 7th story, she goes, I'm in.
Yeah,
I love it.
I've heard enough.
Absolutely love it. So when, here we are now a year later after Anna's been in the company for a while, I walk in the office, we're talking about the deals we're renegotiating, and this lady's story comes up, and I look over at Anna, and I'm like, I just told this girl a year ago that we solve problems, we don't put people in bad situations. And I'm like, close the deal, we'll figure it out. And I did. I'm glad I did it. I feel good about it, that I can say it, and I know that lady's super happy. I got a picture of me and my wife, or we're like standing there taking a photo with her, and I feel good about it. But that was the only time I've ever lost money on a deal.
So, but you're playing the long game, right? So you're saying a short-term loss is that's worth it for my integrity. Right. That's worth it because this is really a small world when you think about it. Real estate investing, especially wholesaling, flipping. And if you get a reputation as someone who doesn't come through, that's money. That's lost revenue over time where people won't want to do business with you.
It takes a long time to build a good reputation, and it takes one deal to get a bad reputation. And so I just didn't want to be a guy that, because we've all had these stories.
Oh, yeah.
Before we even did this video, we were talking about a guy here in town that has repeatedly put people in bad situations, and now there's like a short phrase of, when you get screwed, you say it's after that guy's name. So we've ran into transactions we're the second wholesaler that comes along after another wholesaler cancels.
On a seller, yeah.
On a seller.
So they're already in a bad...
And these are guys that, this is different than this lady's situation, but this is how I felt when I was going through it. We've ran into it, I'm sure you've ran into it 100 times, where a seller's like, I've already been screwed over, some guy already canceled on me, da-da-da-da-da. And I go, what was the name of the company? And they tell me sometimes the name of people I know in the industry. And I'm like, I never want my name to
thrown out there
ever thrown out in a negative way. And for me, it was worth it just to close the deal. Now, in hindsight, if I waited 45 days, we probably would have made 10 or 15,000. We would have been fine.
Because market went right back.
The buyers came back.
It's hotter
right
even. Yeah.
It's harder.
It's hotter.
It is hotter. Yeah.
COVID actually in Phoenix and a lot of markets has increased. Yeah.
Because it removed a lot of homes that had people in it, and that inventory is not there. And so flip properties are the vacant ones that everybody wants to see. That inventory is like very, very hard to come by.
Right.
So it's actually increased the activity and made prices jump, which is a weird thing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Yeah,
because
it's fun. All the unemployment and everything, but real estate's like boom.
We have we have a house on Bloomfield. We actually bought it subject to, we took it retail, so we did what we call a subtail, right? So we actually closed sub 2, so I didn't have to use hard money, I didn't use anything, which was great. And we went through Bloomfield, we put on the market, we're making 60 grand on this deal, which is amazing. And we got 2 offers yesterday. One, we listed it for $299, $690 is the number I always list. That $690 is the number. We listed it for $299, $690. First offer we get $260 with concessions. And I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So I told my wife, who lists my properties, to go reach out to the agent, ask him why, like, are we missing something?
Yeah.
Am I way off base?
Yeah.
The agent's justification was, well, COVID.
Yeah, I want a COVID discount.
I go, okay, forget them. 3 hours later, got an offer at $305, no concessions, $5,000 over list price. And
but you can't blame them. I mean, I do it when I'm making offers now. I'm like, oh, COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
And even though it's not really...
Well, right now, not anymore, especially in Phoenix.
It was for a minute, though.
For a while, about a week, maybe 10 days, I was like, we got to renegotiate everything. We have to fix everything.
I was doing 20% discount off my formula number. Just because, like, who knows?
Fair. That's totally fair.
Who knows where this is going, but
Yep.
Interesting.
Lesson learned is the only deal I ever lost money on, ever.
So let's put this out there. I'd love to hear a comment. What would you have done if you were in Pace's situation? Would you have closed on that wholesale deal to keep your word, to keep good with your seller, or would you have busted up the contract? What was the earnest money?
Earnest money for us is always $1,000.
Okay. You could have busted the contract. Given them $1,000.
I would have given them the $1,000. I would have been very straight up and said, "Listen, I don't know what's happening in the world right now. I don't know what this is going to look like. But here's the." It was a lot of things. Here's the $1,000
part of it was when I saw I went into it was like the war room. I was going in there to talk about all the deals we're renegotiate. And Anna's sitting there. And I just told Anna a year ago, it's like, this is the best business in because we solve people's problems. I will never hurt a seller
And you thought you could still make money by closing.
We really did. We thought, let's just wait a week out. Because I looked at the COVID thing, especially here in Phoenix. I'm like, look, we're not LA. We're not New York City. It's nothing like the rest of the world. Phoenix is basically like our own little bubble.
Yeah.
But the buyers all the buyers paused for a good 2-3 weeks. Yeah. And so when push came to shove, we had enough projects going on. I just said, look, basically I had closing costs, hard money, carry for maybe 30 days. And then I basically brought a check for $8,000 or $9,000 to the closing table to sell to my buyer.
Yeah.
So whatever. We figured it out. It was all good. So, but all collectively, we lost just shy of $20,000.
Awesome.
But
not awesome, but
doing all the deals we've ever done, I've only lost a deal or money one single time.
I wish I could say that.
Right. So.
All right, let's hear your best deal now.
Best deal is a deal that I just did this year. I actually got the deal. So this will teach people there's a ton of different ways. It's kind of like bandit signs. I've never done a deal from a bandit sign, but here we are, Birmingham, Alabama, crushing it on bandit signs, right? But I got this deal from Brent Daniels TTP. So on Fridays, Brent Daniels has people come into his office that are his TTP alumni. And he calls me up and he goes, "Hey man, I know you're in the field today. Do you mind stopping by my office?" I go, "Yeah man, I'd love to." I stopped by his office. His students had flown in and I'm like, "Bro, let me take them out in the field." So we're eating lunch in the office, just chatting and telling people here's what I'm going to do. I've got buy appointments. I've got a mobile home development I'm working on. Let's go drive around and do all this stuff. Brent Daniels, acquisition guy, Eric, walks into the room. "Pace, I've got a lead that only you can solve. It's a creative finance deal." I go, "How do you know it's a creative finance deal?" He goes, "She owes 40 and the house, the ARV is $44,000.
So no equity.
No equity, and the lady's dead." And I'm like, "Okay, who are you talking to?" He goes, "Her daughter." Cool. I go, "Get her on the phone right now." He goes, "You want to talk to her right now?" I go, "Yeah. I got all the students around. Let's show people how this business is really done, right? Similar to what you do on your channel. Watch me negotiate.
Get on the phone. Yeah.
There's no better way to teach somebody than just walking them through it. So I get on the phone. Lady's name is Crystal. She goes, "I work. I can't get out to the property." I go, "No problem. I'll just get over to the property right now, and I'll just break into a window if you don't mind." She's like, "Yeah, that's fine."
So it's vacant.
Vacant, right? So I go over to the property. I take Brent Daniels students with me. I pop in the window and go through, take photos. I go, "All right, Crystal, where are you at?" She goes, "I'm just getting off work." Cool. She comes over. I sign a contract with her. And now, for anybody that knows this, her mother's dead. The mortgage is in her mother's name. And I'm signing a contract with Crystal
for 44, or what was it?
It was, so I said, what would it take to get this deal done? She goes, "I honestly don't even know how you're going to buy this." I go, "I'll kind of educate you on the process, but just know I can legally buy the property. It's going to involve leaving your mother's mortgage in place. But in order for me to take this property over, what would you take in return?" She goes, "I don't know, $500. I'm like, "Okay, great." So I actually ended up paying her $2,000 because she has 4 sisters involved. And
everybody wants something. Yeah.
They didn't even want it. I just knew it was going to be a crazy good deal. And you guys look at it, most people are thinking, how are you going to make money on a spread? There is no spread, right? So here's what happened. Crystal.
Does it need rehabbed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Needed rehab. It actually found out it was 4 months behind on the mortgage because the mother had passed away. So mortgage is $400 a month, PITI, so principal, interest, taxes, insurance, full payment is a little over $400. And I look at this deal and I go, "Dude, I can buy this for almost nothing, and I can seller finance this out probably $129, $139.
After a fix-up?
After a fix-up.
Okay.
So basically what we do is Crystal goes, "I don't know how you're gonna do this." So I call my probate attorney, Rylas Dana. Love him. He's always on our YouTube channel. He's always doing stuff for our crew. And Rylas does the probate. I get Crystal to be the executor of the estate, and I sign a new contract. And a lot of people are like, why did you sign a contract in the first place? That was a null and void contract from the get-go.
Why?
Because Crystal can't sign a contract on a house
she's
she
not
doesn't
the
own.
executioner or whatever.
Right, she wasn't the executor, right. So I signed the contract with Crystal only to plant a psychological seed to not allow her to sell it anywhere else.
Yeah.
So, and I told her
Even though it wasn't legally binding,
right,
it was still...
It was basically a letter of understanding, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to buy the property, I'm going to give you $2,000, we're going to close once the probate's done, So probate gets done, we close escrow on the deal. We brought a private money lender in that brought the arrears current, paid Crystal her money, paid for the renovation, the closing costs, etc. So I'm no money into the deal, and that lender's in second position. So I took over a $40,000.
Because they have to be, because there's an existing mortgage.
Right. So we got the mortgage at $40,000 with a $400 monthly payment. My private lender now is about $15,000 total is what we brought together. We paid them about $200 a month, and I took that collective $55,000, and I turned around and we sold it 2 days ago for $169 at 9.5%.
At 9.5%.
9.5%.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Which means because it's seller financing, they have to refinance later until you realize the gain, right?
I'm not forcing them to refinance ever.
Okay, but if they were,
If they decided to refinance out, then I would get that big chunk of
you
money.
get that
I would
50
get a
grand or
windfall.
whatever. What would that be? It'd be
I'd get about
70
close
or
to
whatever.
$100,000.
Yeah.
So what was their down payment?
Their down payment's 10%, $16,000.
So you're getting $16,000 up front, and then what's your cash flow now? Because your
My
hours.
So their payment to us is $13.95.
But your private's okay to stay in the deal.
So we're taking the down payment from
To pay them off.
right. So now
You guys catch that? So his private money was about $15,000. The down payment from the new seller finance buyer is that.
Essentially that.
So he took that down payment, paid off his private money. So now you're back to a $400 a month cost on the house. And what are they paying?
$13.95.
$13.95 is the new payment.
Make
So,
$1,000
and that's why you said, I hope they never pay it off.
Yeah, because
Because
my
you're-
$100,000 that I basically have in a second position, right? I'm the lender because I basically sold it to them on a wrap.
Yeah.
I'm now the lender there's $40,000 plus my $115,000 in equity. But that $115,000 makes me 9.5% interest.
Right.
So over a 30-year mortgage, I'll probably make $250,000 to $300,000 in profit
interest.
on that one deal.
Yeah. So why pay it off? But if
Why
they
pay it
did,
off?
so worst case is you make $100,000 if they were to, because they very well may say, you know what, interest rates are at 3.5%. I'm going to refinance,
Right.
get out of my 9% interest. You would be like, oh dang, I just made $100,000
Right.
with no money out.
Right.
Or they keep making that payment forever, and you just cash flow the snot out of that thing.
Right, and the reason why it's my best deal, I've had deals where I've made more money, like especially right up front. I've had a bunch of those cool deals, but the reason I like this deal is I ended up having zero competition on it. Nobody else
Everyone
saw
walked
it.
from it. Yeah.
Everybody walked from it, and Eric, even, Brent Daniels focuses on wholesale, which is cool. Jamil just alluded to this, like, focus on your niche, right? Eric comes to me, he's like, this is a dead lead for us.
Yeah.
And I'll make $100,000 to $300,000 on a deal that cost me $0. I solved multiple people's problems along the way. And if that buyer, here's the thing, is if my buyer ever defaults, I take the property back, I go do it again. Right?
Yeah.
So not that I want that to happen, but it can happen. And it's just crazy how many solutions you can solve in this business.
So for you guys listening right now, you're probably on the channel because we mostly talk about wholesaling and flipping, but what's cool about this is when you can go into an appointment or you can look at a deal and you've got more than one or two ways to make money, now all of a sudden you can start putting deals together that everyone else is walking from. Paige teaches how to do this. I'm going to put the links to everybody's, whatever you guys want to give me that people can share. We'll put that in the description below. I know you've got a very active Facebook group, and all three of you guys have YouTube channels, so we'll put all that in there. Make sure you go follow these guys. It's going to really help you just broaden your perspective on how to make money in this business and be successful.
So fun.
So,
Yeah,
Jerry, what about you?
Yeah, so I thought about my story too, and my biggest loss story is kind of similar to yours in a way. The way this worked was I went into this project where we were buying, there was this, this is Detroit, Michigan.
I was just going to ask what market.
This is
You've
Detroit.
You've been all over the country.
Right, this is low end. So there was these unit of buildings, there was 4 sections of 10, they were row houses. So meaning they were deeded individually. So they looked like apartments, like 4 rows of 10, wall-to-wall brick. So they looked just like an apartment complex would look, built in like the 20s, so they're old, but they were deeded individually. And I thought this would be fun to acquire all 40 of them. We'll buy all 40 of them, which is 40 different sellers.
Wow.
Right? And then we're going to fix them up and we're going to flip these things. We're going to make all this money. And so we started like buying them one at a time, and we could only get to 20. We bought 20 of them. Now, here's the big part of the story. I brought in an investor to fund purchase and renovation, right? And it was an equity thing, so it was a 50-50. So they fronted all the money. I managed the project.
So you didn't have to make monthly payments?
No monthly payments, no nothing. The problem one of the problems was it was a family member, but our deal was you front the money, I do the work, we split. Now, what that also means is if things don't go so well, okay, right? Now, we split, right? So we ended up getting only 20 of the units, and I fixed them up, but I wasn't able to like turn around the whole place because the other 20 were being slummed out. So I'm like mowing everybody else's lawns, and I'm like, but there's like fights going on and all this problems, and I'm trying to turn, and it failed miserably because I couldn't get the whole thing.
So you couldn't get the values to where you needed them to be because the other ones were holding it all down.
Right. How can I sell mine for more when the one right next to it's a dump, you know?
Was it an option to put all of them on the contract because they were individually, that, hey, we can't buy yours until everybody agrees?
That might have been a smart way to do it. I mean, I would have had to line up 40, but I didn't. We just started contacting all the sellers, and some of them, I mean, they were all rentals. Everyone was renting them. No one was living in them. And I mean, it just did. But I put 2 years and so much work. I mean, I was out there every day. And then, so here's what happens. The whole thing, finally, we just start selling them for losses. We end up losing close to $400,000 total.
And 2 years of your life.
Because then 2007 and 8 happened.
Oh my
so now
God.
they basically went worthless. Because this is Detroit.
You lived there at the time?
I live nearby there, yeah.
Okay, okay.
So they basically became worthless. I mean, we were selling these things for $5,000. You know, into
you
them
were
for
one of
90.
those. You were one of those guys.
Yeah, this is Detroit. I mean, when Detroit crashed, it crashed. I mean, like it burned.
I've seen a lot of people buying houses over there for like $1,000.
They were selling houses for $1 there.
Yeah.
In 2008, 2009.
Oh my God.
So we lose like close to $400,000. Well, it's not my money. It's my family member investor's money. Well, he comes to me and says, you know what? This ain't cool. I want you to pay it all back. Not half.
No,
all
that's
of it.
not how it works, bro.
And that ain't how it works, but kind of like your situation, and this is my wife's family, not mine, right? To save the peace, I agreed to it. So it took me 5-6 years to pay back $400,000 in this project loss. I mean, I was making payments, and I'd do a deal, and I'd throw $5,000 back at him, and it took me a while, paid him back all the money. Now, he looked at this situation and said, real estate doesn't work. I'm never doing real estate again. And he turned his back on real estate. Never, like if you say to him real estate, he's like, no, I want nothing to do with that. I took the experience and I learned so much because I was learning how to renovate properties. I was talking to sellers. I was contracting. I was doing all these things. And this is fairly early on. I was only a couple years in. And so the experience I gained going through that terrible situation.
Of education.
Looking back now, I would not trade that loss for the education I got from going through the experience of the whole thing.
Amazing.
You probably share that a lot with your students too, that in that story and everything that you learned in that. So like that $400,000 education you paid for still helps people today.
I hope so, because I tell people I look at baseball as an analogy, right? No one bats 1,000%, right? What's a good batting average? 300 is amazing, right? That means you're not getting on base 7 out of 10 times. Yeah. But yet people come into this business and they think every single deal is a home run.
Right.
And I kind of look at it like, at the end of the year, you add up your wins and losses. Hopefully your wins were more, right? Because you're going to, you cannot put yourself out there, get in this business without some level of risk. Right. Now, wholesaling's low, but you might risk some earnest money.
Yep.
Or some option fee, or you might close thinking you'll resell and you don't, or you do it. I mean, you have to be willing to flex that risk muscle if you're going to be successful in this business, I think.
I 100% agree.
mini seminars. Those are mini seminars this year.
So I've got a question though, and this goes back to your structure, because the way that I structure money partners in participation deals is that the money is always the money. So the loss is always the money loss, right?
Yeah.
I don't get into a JV with somebody if I'm bringing the money to the table, if they're doing the work, and there's a loss. I don't expect the person doing the work to come up with 50% of the loss, let alone 100% of the loss, right? So for people that are new to partnerships and structuring situations like that, how would you moving forward do that or restructure that?
That's a good
And
point.
was that verbal?
Let me add a layer, because you were doing the mowing lawns, talking to neighbors.
I was out there every day.
The work, so your
Yeah.
work and effort was doubled, right? So that was your part of the deal. Your effort was already doubled. It's not like you were calling him and saying, "Hey, come to Detroit and come mow these lawns with me," because we're splitting the effort now.
Here's my take on that. So there's two ways to form an investor. You could do a debt, which is just straight interest rate. You get paid first. Whatever I make, you get your interest rate, and that's it, right? 12% or whatever it is. Or equity. If you want equity, which is I want a piece of the pie at the end, then you're taking on a different level of risk, which means you're going to participate in losses too, if it doesn't win.
Right.
Otherwise, go with debt, get an interest payment, and be happy.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of investors don't look at it that way. And you got to make sure you're clear about that. Really explain that.
Yeah. I
clearly
mean, even
with
if you
people.
were clear on that, Jerry,
It was family.
family from your wife's side, like
Yeah,
you're not
it
going to
just
come home
ain't
and
gonna
have,
work.
no, it ain't gonna work. That's
That's the other
really
lesson.
tough deal.
You all had something on paper or just verbal?
We did. We had it, but he didn't care. It was because all he saw was upside.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So he didn't mentally accept that there would be a loss here.
Right.
Yeah, he still probably feels hard done by.
He does.
Because he thinks the opportunity cost is what the loss was.
And it took me a while to pay him back,
Yeah.
which wasn't fair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And here I'm moving on. So he's seen me make deals
Accelerate.
and grow my income, and
Right.
and the more he saw that, the more he was like paying me back faster. And it's like, you're killing me. You know, like I'm trying to do something here too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are
Wow.
tough
And
situations.
the thing is, if that investor invested in any other project with anybody non-related to his family, he would have walked away with at least a $200,000 loss, possibly $400,000 loss, because that other person probably would have walked away and filed bankruptcy or done whatever and said, "I'm out."
Well, and this is kind of another side of the story. I kept seeing the writing on the wall, and I kept telling him, we got to stop, we got to pull out. He kept saying, we're in too deep, keep going, keep going. And if we would have pulled out when I was telling him, let's pull out, the loss would have been 50, 100. So I feel like you were the one that kept wanting to go. And I should have said, you know what, this just isn't working. Market's turning. We're not able to get, no, the sellers are saying no. We're not able to get any more.
That's one of the 50 lessons you learned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that was my
And your best?
my best. My best is not the most profitable. It was just such a fun deal. So this is a commercial building. First time I ever wholesaled. It's a wholesale. First time I ever wholesaled a commercial building. It was a bank-owned property and all brick, like office building. A Century 21 was in there, and this agent calls me who got the listing. So it was listed in the wrong MLS. They move it over to the right MLS, so it was like in a completely different MLS. So no one was even seeing it. So it comes into the right MLS. He gets the listing as the REO agent. He calls me before it's listed, right? Which is what happens when you have relationships with agents. They call you. So he calls me and says, hey, I'm getting ready to list this thing. It's a commercial building. He says, I'm going to get this thing for $285. Like you couldn't even do the parking lot on a commercial building for $285, right? So I look at the building, I'm like, I have no idea, I got no clue, but how can I go wrong at $285? So I say yes with a $10,000 earnest money, and I tell the agent, I say, give me a couple days to get you the earnest money. So he says, okay, I'll lock it up for you, it's yours. So then this commercial building was in like a condo unit. So there were like 3 other buildings identical, same brick, same roof. When they developed it, they did the other ones. So here's what I did. I walked over to the building right next to it. There's like units in it, right?
Love this.
And I walk into I just pick one. I walk in, I say, hey, so this is before skip tracing or any of that kind of stuff. I walk in, I say, hey, I'm looking for the owner of the building. And it was a psychiatrist office. So she says, oh, Dr. So-and-so in this office owns the building. I'm like, cool. So we make an appointment. I come back. I go in his office, and it's like the leather chair. And he's like, have a seat. You know, and I'm like,
Did
So
you-
I'm
did you
I'm like,
lay
no,
down?
I'm like this because I'm like, I'm not laying down or he's going to do a mind game on me.
Jerry's like, so I made this deal in Detroit.
So I say, hey, I got the building next door. I'm just wondering if you're interested. Well, come to find out, he had been trying to buy that building
Wow.
for a long time, but he's just doing it wrong. He didn't know how to deal with REO. He didn't, you know, he was like making the wrong offer. But he'd been trying to buy that building, and here I come in and grab the contract.
Wow.
So he says to me, well, what do you want for the building? What do you want for it? And, you know, he who names the price first loses. So I'm like, well, what do you want? Well, what do you... So we were in this, and he knew that, so we're in this stalemate. So finally I say, so I got the contract $285, right? I say, I just figured $100,000. Why not? So I say $385. And he says, I won't pay a dime more than 300, or he threw out a really low number. So I stood up, I stuck out my hand, and I said, I'll see you later. And he literally says, whoa, tough guy, sit down. So
Tough guy.
yeah,
Love it.
and I'm like my late 20s, right? So, we end up settling at $350.
Wow.
And I did a true assignment, and I said, you need to pay me $10,000 in earnest money, and I need it, right? Which is not how you're supposed to do it. It's supposed to go to escrow. But I had a $10,000 earnest money to the bank due,
and you wanted it
and
back.
I didn't want to come out, right? So I took his $10,000, used it to pay my $10,000. So a literal zero down, zero out of pocket deal.
Love it.
And then 30 days later, he came in cash $350.
So you
and
got
sold it.
285, 350.
So 65.
65.
65
Okay.
wholesale on a
Dang.
commercial building.
Nice job.
And what was fun about it was, my gut was telling me, how can you go wrong at 285? It could have turned out bad, but it was just one of those deals where I feel like when you're in the game, things like that can happen.
Oh, all the time. I tell people when you're trying to catch fish off the side of the river, you're going to get some, but if you're standing in the river with a net, you're going to catch a lot more. And that's what you were doing. You're in the game, you're in the stream, you're in the flow of things.
Yeah.
That's freaking awesome. So do you know what he did with it? Did he expand his business?
So what happened was in the other building, his wife had a daycare that she ran, and they needed more space.
Awesome.
So he just moved her daycare over to this building, and
Yeah,
that
and
I
was-
so
love
for-
that you just walked right in.
And that guy's highest and best use was the income from the business of the daycare.
Right.
So it wasn't about the real estate.
and he won
That's-
huge. So I looked it up. This thing foreclosed for $1.4 million. He bought it for $350.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now he needed to do some work on it and stuff, but
Yep.
all brick, commercial building.
Looking back,
Good
could you
location.
have sold it for more money?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Like I wish, I look
But
back.
it wasn't his to sell
That's
for
right.
more. That wasn't his money.
Yeah.
So these houses I would wholesale in Detroit. Now looking back, if I would have kept 1 out of 10 and just rented them out and kept them,
Right.
the values are 3 times what I was doing deals. But that's
Yeah,
how it
that's
goes.
the game.
That's
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
You got to elevate to
Hey,
the
if
next
you
rung of
predict
the
the
ladder.
future, you'll be in a different business.
I know, right? Exactly. So do your thing. It's okay. Yeah.
Awesome. This was super enlightening, guys. It was interesting to hear all of your stories.
I've actually never heard either one of those stories all the way through.
I was trying to make it fresh for you.
Dude, thank you. I've heard a lot of his stories, which is fun. And he's a great storyteller. He's like one of my favorite people I've ever seen on stage. But I've never heard that land deal all the way through. I knew
That's
it was
cool.
a painful point.
Yeah.
Never heard all the way through. And I knew you had some bad stuff going on in Detroit, like with some of the videos I've watched of yours.
Yeah.
But I've never heard that whole thing, especially the family part. I never heard that part.
Yeah. So you guys listening right now, share a comment. Tell us maybe some of your biggest takeaways, what you learned. And I hope you, by listening to this, I hope you see that by getting in this business, you can have some awesome wins. And the wins, the better you get at it, the more the wins are. But know that there are losses and you have bad deals and things don't always go the way they should go. And that's just the name of the game. And once you learn to stomach that and you learn to learn through that, that's when you have just tremendous growth. I honestly feel like I've learned more from my losses probably than from my wins. You guys agree?
Yeah, I take a notebook to every loss.
Yeah. So that's how you get better at this game. So thanks for joining us. This was a long video, but a lot of fun, and appreciate you guys for being there.
Thank you, Jerry.
Again, I'm going to put their information in the description below. Promise me you're going to go follow these guys, learn from them, go to their channels, go to their pages, and Instagram. We'll put all that in there, and you guys can follow them and stay in touch too. Awesome. We'll see you guys on the next video.